Right, so today has seen the last 2 female hostages held by Hamas in Gaza released, along with the first man of this ceasefire, along with 5 Thai hostages in what has been a bonus release, demanded after Netanyahu tried to change the ceasefire deal once again last weekend, when he took umbrage over the fact Hamas released 3 female IDF soldiers rather than the required civilians he'd asked for, specifically naming 2 individuals as he did so, Arbel, Yehud and Agam Berger. However, the fact Berger was also an IDF soldier quickly came out, resulting in much pouring of scorn upon the Israeli PM for whinging over nothing, for attempting to derail the ceasefire again already, his desperation to do so becoming more and more self-evident. It seems Netanyahu is very much running out of time as, despite today's hostage releases of 8 individuals by Hamas largely going off without a hitch, Netanyahu has tried to make something out of nothing here again, and with a further warning shot across his bowels from someone he really can't afford to cross, a guy he's already done a despicable deal with that requires the end of the Gaza ceasefire, time is ticking for Netanyahu to make good on his promise if he wants to stay in power for much longer. Right, so there have been scenes of jubilation amongst Israeli families, supporters and friends today as 3 more hostages have been released by Hamas. First was the release of that other IDF soldier, after the fuss kicked up by Netanyahu last weekend about Hamas releasing IDF soldiers. Agam Berger was released from, of all places, northern Gaza, from Jabalia at that, where some of the most destructive and wanton attacks by the IDF have been concentrated in their bid to ethnically cleanse the area as per the so-called general's plan. And it begs the question of whether Berger had been held there for all of this time, because if that is the case, it's a huge embarrassment for Israel that she's been right under their noses. The IDF supposedly picking through every inch of that area, seeking to rout Hamas and remove any Gazans still clinging to existence there, ethnic cleansing the area as they were, and yet somehow they still managed to miss her. Well, with few people left there, it is perhaps not surprising that the handover to the Red Cross, again acting as intermediaries, was a quiet affair when it came to Berger. But the same could not be said, however, of the release of Arbel Yehud and the 80-year-old Gadi Moses, the first man to be released by Hamas in this ceasefire, along with 5 Thai hostages. These people were released in Khan Yunis, central, getting on for southern Gaza as that is, where there are a lot more Palestinians now. But the release point for these people was quite deliberately chosen, it seems, the hostages being released outside of the house of Yahya Sinwar, the former Hamas leader killed whilst fighting in Rafah, footage of which spread around the world as IDF soldiers thought they'd scored this huge victory, when instead the image of a Hamas leader fighting to the end, when Israel so often spoke of them hiding behind human shields and in bunkers away from the fighting, instead blew up in their faces. The same routine was essentially in place here, though, the hostages released to the Red Cross. There was a bit of jostling from the crowds that were assembled, and this was shocking, appalling, condemnable, according to Netanyahu and co. Unbelievable scenes of their people being pushed around a little bit, jostled as they went from one point to the Red Cross, but in no way do I believe Netanyahu was looking at that and being appalled. When Israel locks kids up, for one, when people come out of their prisons half the person they used to be, shock and fear across their faces at the treatment they've had, well, it's not revulsion at all. It's more, how can I possibly use this situation to my advantage? He's so desperate to make something out of nothing that between him and his mad Defence Minister Israel Katz, they declared that due to their shock and horror, the hostages they were due to release in exchange, including 30 children, were going to be suspended. How dare you mistreat our people in this way? A bit of shoving compared to 15 months in captivity at Hamas, and this is what tips you over the edge then, is it? Netanyahu punched out a tweet on Twitter to tell the world exactly what he was thinking at this point, though, saying, "I view with great severity the shocking scenes during the release of our hostages. This is further proof of the unimaginable cruelty of the Hamas terrorist organisation. I demand that the mediators ensure that such threatening scenes do not occur again, and to guarantee the safety of our hostages. Whoever dares to harm our captives, his blood will be on his head." Oh, shut up, you tart. You protest too much. How about the fact you've been trashing the houses of some of those due to be released today ahead of those releases? A kid called Ahmad Al-Frouk that Israel had imprisoned, had kept captive, a hostage, is due to be released by Israel today, and the IDF went round and smashed all the furniture up in his home. How about fake calls from Israelis to Palestinian families telling them their loved ones are being released when actually they weren't at all? That's pretty depraved, mendacious, petty and cruel. Well, the release of Israeli-held hostages, for that is what they are as well, has finally begun just as I was writing this. A few hours delay happened, but it all went ahead as planned anyway. Someone who will be incensed by this release going ahead, especially since he's had his own whinge about the scenes of apparent mistreatment of their hostages being escorted through crowds of Palestinians, was far-right Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who pleaded with Netanyahu not to release any more Palestinians from their prisons, also taking to Twitter, saying, "I am calling on the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to prevent the release of terrorists, Palestinians, from Israeli prisons, at least until guarantees are received that the harsh and humiliating images from Gaza and the abuse of our hostages just before their return will not reoccur." All Palestinians are terrorists, are they? Oh, this was tame, though. Tame compared to his tweet following the immediate release of Agam, Berger, Arbel, Yehud and Gadi Moses, when he tweeted out, "At these moments, we are all excited about Arbel, Agam and Gadi's return home. Alongside the great concern about the cost of the deal, there is no person in the state of Israel whose heart is not filled with infinite joy at seeing them with us again. The images from Gaza must not be normalized. These are bloodthirsty beasts of prey filled with an abysmal hatred of Israel. If we do not eliminate them, they will continue to threaten and eliminate us. We are for life and peace and cannot leave our children in a situation where such monsters live in close proximity to them and endanger them. We must continue to fight until Hamas is completely destroyed." And this segues nicely onto exactly why the clock is ticking on Benjamin Netanyahu's prime ministership, the longer that this ceasefire continues. Right now, Smotrich holds him by the short and curlies. He refused to follow his mate Itamar Ben-Gvir out of the door when the ceasefire came into force, but if he does go from government, then he will topple Netanyahu's regime. Smotrich has all the power now, in which case, so why didn't he leave already then? Why did he accept the ceasefire to begin with at all? Simply, he has assurances that the ceasefire will not last. It's been something of an open secret that the three-phase ceasefire will not go beyond phase 1 because Netanyahu has given such assurance to Smotrich that it won't. Phase 2 involving the complete withdrawal from Gaza of the IDF. Smotrich, after all, and his party, the religious Zionist party, is the voice of the settler movement, who want to occupy Gaza. They want the Gazan people out and gone. And the language of Donald Trump has been music to Smotrich's ears when Trump talks of ethnically cleansing the Strip completely and moving all the people there to Egypt or Jordan, opposed as that would be globally. Netanyahu has to keep Smotrich on side, not just to keep himself in power, but also to fend off all of those pesky corruption charges he still faces, and not to mention his own accountability, and again reinforcing the need for independent investigation of the lead-up of events to the night of October 7th, 2023. Middle East Eye produced a good article titled "Smotrich Assured Israel Would Continue War and Take Control of Gaza," an excerpt of which reads, "Smotrich and his far-right religious Zionism party voted against the ceasefire deal, but remained in the government after Netanyahu reportedly agreed to a number of their demands. The far-right minister said that while his party could not prevent the deal, they were able to ensure through the cabinet and other ways that the war would not end without achieving Israel's full goals, foremost of which is the complete destruction of Hamas in Gaza. He said that his faction had demanded and received a commitment that the method of war would be completely changed. That included, said Smotrich, through a gradual takeover of the entire Gaza Strip, the lifting of the restrictions imposed on us by the US President Joe Biden's administration, and full control of the Strip so that humanitarian aid will not reach Hamas as it has been until now." Smotrich also went on to say that Gaza was currently ruined, disintegrated and uninhabitable, and that it would stay that way. "Don't be impressed by the forced joy of our enemy. This is an animalistic society that sanctifies death. Very soon we will erase their smile again and replace it with cries of grief and the wails of those who were left with nothing." Yeah, you're a peace-loving guy, are you? Out of his tiny fricking mind is what he is. But this is who Netanyahu is utterly beholden to in government, who has all the power, and exactly why this ceasefire will inevitably fail. And why at every turn Netanyahu is looking for that opportunity to pull the plug, because he knows he has to. Because this guy Smotrich, and Ben-Gvir too, will accept nothing less. Any chance Netanyahu sees to collapse the ceasefire before the 42-day period of phase 1 is up, he's going to take. Because by the end, he's got to have a good reason to not move forward with phase 2. And that is if any agreement on what the details of phase 2 will look like ever get hammered out. Negotiations over that are due to begin in the next week. So this could be a point of reckoning, and if Netanyahu isn't making the right noises towards those negotiations as Smotrich wants, He could call it quits much sooner, and current polling in Israel leaves Netanyahu looking very unlikely to be able to retain power. The ceasefire is reaching its first real moment of vulnerability from the political perspective, and how long before it actually falls, if it survives this, really is, it seems, just a matter of time. Netanyahu will not put anything before his own grip on power. He has had a bit of good news this week, though, as well, as the ICJ may have just tilted somewhat back in his favour. With the departure of the president of the ICJ, Nawaf Salam, to become the new Prime Minister of Lebanon, the new president at the ICJ is now Julia Sebutinde, the one dissenting judge on every single resolution in South Africa's case of genocide against Israel. And digging into her past might indicate exactly why she's voted as she has, and it makes her a seemingly compromised individual whose religious convictions supersede the law. What could this mean for the case going forward? Check out this video recommendation to find out more. Please do hit like, share and subscribe to the channel before you do so, though, so as to ensure you don't miss out on new daily content, and it all helps support the channel as well, which is very much appreciated. And I will hopefully catch you on the next feed. Cheers, folks.